This is Brian, ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is Texas Chainsaw 3D, directed by John Lucenhop. And Tobe Hooper's 1974 movie, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, is, to my mind, the beginning, or very close to it at any rate, of the slasher movie genre. Now that's not to say that there weren't movies before Texas Chainsaw, though Texas Chainsaw was the only one I was aware of at the time. For instance, my first horror movie was probably The Blood on Satan's Claw from 1971, and I only gradually became aware of slasher movies, and I don't think the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre made much of an impression on me. Friday the 13th, Halloween, that's another matter entirely, despite the fact that both of those films were very much inspired by Tobe Hooper's movie. And as I said, what I'm looking at today is the 2013 3D Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And this is an interesting movie. It's not great. It's certainly watchable, mind you. All practical gore. Well, it's 2013. They're not going to go overboard with the CGI. And it's very watchable. It's enjoyable for what it is. But it does something really odd. It tries to turn Leatherface into a sympathetic character, which is perhaps the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It's just so strange that they would do this. Now keep in mind, Leatherface is up to his old antics once again, which is to say, chainsawing people to death. Yet the movie keeps trying to put him into a more sympathetic light. And it's the strangest thing. And I wish the movie would stop doing it. Or, if you're going to do it, be better written so that it makes sense. The story revolves around this woman who gets an inheritance from a relative she was not aware of, and it's a house. And so she and a bunch of her friends go to the house. The person who's executing her, I think her grandmother or some such person, the person who's executing the will tells her to read the letter, which she never gets around to doing. Which, if she had done, would probably be a significantly shorter movie, because the letter is telling her that her crazy relative, Leatherface, lives in the house. And that's where this goes bonkers. As I said, it revolves around this girl, but prior to that, there's a flashback scene, and Leatherface has been up to his old tricks, and the sheriff is coming to arrest him. His family is protecting him, as in not letting him go out and defending their home against anyone who tries to enter. Now, in past versions of this story, the family were complicit in what Leatherface was doing. They weren't by any means innocent. So that's a little weird. But in any case, they end up protecting Leatherface till a vigilante mob comes and burns the house down, killing the family, though Leatherface manages to escape. And I assume the grandmother, or whomever she was. Now the thing is, Leatherface is a terrible character. I mean terrible in the sense of he is ruthlessly evil, and he kills wantonly. And the idea that a vigilante mob tries to kill him sounds just about right to me. I have no issue with that. And in fact, I'm sympathetic with the vigilante mob. Though the movie treats the vigilantes as if they're the bad guys. As if just by the act of them trying to kill a mass murderer makes them somehow bad. And as I mentioned, the family is treated in a manner that makes them seem kinder. I don't know why that is, because, as I said, the family in most of these movies is complicit in what Leatherface does. They may not actively help in some instances, they may in others. The point being, they're well aware of it. And in this movie, they seem to at least get why what's happening is happening. So in that sense, the movie doesn't make any sense. How do you redeem someone like Leatherface? It would be like making a movie that's sympathetic to Charles Manson. Could you do it? Sure you could do it. But why would you do it? Now, admittedly, that would be more sacrilegious, if you will, because Charles Manson is a real, well, I should say was a real person because he's been dead for, I want to say, at least 5 to 10 years. But Leatherface is not. Though it doesn't change the fact that his acts were heinous. In every film, his acts are heinous. And if it takes a vigilante mob to get rid of this person, then, as I said, I'm all for it. This is similar plot-wise to the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, which is you have the families band together to get rid of Freddy Krueger for what he was doing with their children. If the story had somehow finagled it that Leatherface was innocent, then that whole storyline would really start to make sense. I can see the vigilantes being the reviled ones from a perspective if we weren't talking about a mass murder. Though as it stands, I'm like, okay? It's really kind of silly, and it's interesting, but it doesn't really make sense, and that goes back to my point. A better writer, or writers, because there's more than one, could have perhaps made this logical somehow. How they could have done that on the face of it, I have no idea. But at least the attempt could have been made. As it stands, the story is nonsensical at best. Though what I didn't mind so much was the 3D in this movie. Too many early 3D movies get their jollies poking objects at you, be it sticks, fingers, knives, that type of thing. Now, I haven't seen this movie in 3D, but I think I've noticed maybe 2 instances of things being poked at the camera, like Dr. Tongue in his 3D House of Stewardesses or something like that. On one level, that's good, in that the 3D was likely not so obtrusive that I even noticed it for the most part. Though, conversely, that could also mean that the 3D is virtually non-existent, and the only examples of it are the 2 examples I definitely saw. Though in any case, Texas Chainsaw 3D is not bad. It's quite watchable. It has its charms. If you can overlook the ridiculousness of the story, you're likely to enjoy it. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or follow.